Hey, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Gary Harper, and this is the Honorable Eric Eastman.
You keep telling me.
Is that correct?
You keep using the word honorable, and I keep trying to look it up and see if it applies to me. I can't make it fit.
No, it's a title. It doesn't have to. You don't actually have to. You earned it by becoming a state rep.
Oh, by duping lots of my neighbors into
Correct.
thinking of me as being honorable?
Yes. In other words, if you can convince a high enough number of your neighbors, you're potentially honorable.
Those acting chops really paid off.
Yes,
Once.
they did. Hey, it worked for Reagan.
It did work for Reagan.
So?
I used that exact same line in front of Josh McElveen when he interviewed me as a brand new rep. Yeah.
Yeah?
He said, "So, what are your plans for politics?" And I said, "Hey, look, this worked for Reagan, didn't it?"
Exactly. You know?
He seemed to resonate.
Tom Flaherty is our guest from where? He just moved up to where? Up to the big city.
North Ware, or also called Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yes.
And
big city of Milford.
And so he sent me a message on Facebook today saying that he wanted to have coffee with me because I'm his I am now his state representative. So instead of coffee, I said, "Well, why don't you come on the show and ask me what you want in public?"
Ambushed.
But he did bring the coffee.
He brought coffee.
He did.
Which was
So that's all.
We met for coffee at a Dunkin' Donuts.
So we did have the coffee. So anyway,
There you go.
so it's up to you. What do you want to talk about?
I just think, if I may, given
Yes.
the fact that I'm not a part of this cozy constituent relationship,
Yes, yes,
I just
yes.
want to honor the fact that you not only took the call from a constituent and that you chatted with him,
Yes.
which makes you a cool guy as a rep because you're supposed to be his representative.
Right,
So you're
right,
doing the right
right,
thing.
right, right.
But you also rolled out the red carpet for his coming on your TV show.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Sight unseen.
Speaking his mind as your constituent. You don't know what he's going to say.
I have no clue.
No idea.
He
He's got
could
some guts.
lambaste you, but you're doing your thing. So.
Well, no, it's not necessarily guts. Is there isn't a lot of gap between guts and stupidity, right? Am I
right.
right?
Well, stupidity too is a gift from God, but you mustn't misuse it.
Yes, exactly.
You got so few constituents, though, so you have to count every one.
Yes,
you know?
but I can't get them all on the show.
No, that's true.
We've tried.
Yes, we have tried.
Got in a little fun.
No, this is great. I mean, how many places in the country can you call up one of your state reps, offer to go for coffee, and be on his TV show? I mean,
That doesn't happen
that does
very
not
often.
happen, you know?
America.
Yeah, New Hampshire.
I
New
love you,
Hampshire.
America.
I
It
come
is,
here.
it is New Hampshire. I mean, it's
It is.
the fact that we each state rep has what 3,000 something,
Yeah,
On average, yeah,
about
3,300.
3,300
people. That's the ratio.
constituents.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good.
But it's actually more than that because I represent Ware and Deering, so any one of those roughly 1,500 people can call me and
Right.
ask me to come on the show.
Yep. Well, I moved it.
Now you said it. It's out of the bag.
Well, I wanted to know what my state reps are up to, so I finally got a chance to spend some time looking at voting records and issue surveys and all that other good stuff, ratings. You know, there's a lot of good ratings and rankings online.
Oh yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
like
what?
constituents like you. You do your homework.
Yeah,
Yeah, not many people do. Like what ratings things did you look into?
I looked at New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. I looked at House Republican Alliance.
Right.
I went to the LFDA to look at the survey. You know, there's an issues survey. They collect a lot of data about reps.
What's LFDA?
Live Free or Die Alliance.
Okay, okay.
So there's a good 4 or 5 easily places that have been doing rankings on people for years.
A long time,
If you've
yeah,
been in for
yeah.
a while, you can see an average and trend up or down or whatever.
Yep.
And the friend of mine, Skip Murphy, he's the guy that runs the Granite Rock, which I write for.
Oh, you do?
Occasionally,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So I saw the name when you sent me a message today, and I remembered it, but I didn't know from where.
Yeah. I'm not as good as a frequent writer as some of the other guys, but
Is that the one Kim Warren?
she writes for it too. Yeah.
She contributes.
Yeah, she was on last week, right? Was that last week with Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I'm a contributor more than a writer, but Skip says thank them when they're good and spank them when they're bad. So, got to know which one they are.
You mean that literally or figuratively?
Figuratively.
Oh, okay. Just checking. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't want to spank
I
you.
didn't want to expect anything weird on the way home because he's driving. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
It's true. And he trusted me, got into my car and everything. You know,
That's because I don't trust my own car.
mine's a new one.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I did my research, and I guess do my other state reps have radio shows or TV shows too that I can go on?
No,
No?
no.
John Burt? No?
John Burt has one. But
He does.
Oh, he does. That's right.
That's right. That is correct. Yeah, he's got
two-thirds.
one. Yeah,
Joel Elber.
Joe.
Elber.
Joel Elber.
Who's that?
He's a state rep, right?
From where?
Is he from where?
Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm
No.
sorry. My bad. Continue.
He has a show too.
Thanks for
He has a
letting.
radio show.
Oh, so there's a lot
But he's
of
not your state rep.
No.
There's a lot of reps that have shows though.
There's others too. Nashua, there's several.
Yep.
Um,
Londonderry.
the guy that I thought of as kind of a political Yoda to me was my fellow rep from my ward, Ward Number 1, my section of town in Nashua, and Carl Seidel, and he has a
Oh,
TV
yeah,
show.
That's right.
Senator Kevin Avard
He has a show.
Yep.
in District 12,
Yep.
Senate District 12, in the southern tier of the state. He's got a show. So a lot of us do that.
Right.
Well, to me, it's a good way. The problem is people hear about an issue on the news. And when they hear about an issue on the news is really good at not covering the issue, but covering the people involved in the issue.
Right.
Okay, so they make let's say the Second Amendment, they'll make that about the people advocating for it and the people advocating against it, or, to curtail it, instead of what is the fundamental issue.
Right.
And a show like this, you can actually talk about why we have the Second Amendment as opposed to some dirtbag who abused it.
Right.
Or when we tried to take Souter's house many years ago, the news media focused entirely on this weirdo from California because partially I think it's to sell magazines or newspapers, but because he was kind of flamboyant and everything else, they made the news about him.
Yeah.
So few people understood what the actual issue was. But in an environment like this, we can actually talk about issues as opposed to people, because
Issues are boring to most people.
yeah, but that's how you should be voting is
I know.
on issues.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it's right,
requires that
but
they do their homework. It requires that they turn on their thinking cap and take some time and take in new information
Yeah.
and process it. And it's not it's not a cult of personality pursuit,
right.
right? And unfortunately, like you said, the mass media, they give you baby food, sound bites, and processed
Emotion.
chunks of information that are clothed in emotion.
Yeah.
And we have an hour.
Right.
Each of these shows is an hour, so we get into it
Yeah.
and really discuss it if we want.
It's like the election with Judge what's Alabama? What's it, Judge Moore's? Judge Moore. That's all emotion right now.
Mm.
You have 5 different women who have accused him of doing something 30 plus years ago,
And disinformation.
right before an election. To me, that red flag
The
should be
timing
going
is
up.
a little
Yeah,
suspect.
I mean, really, the guy's done all kinds of other things, and now you decide to come out.
Yeah.
So to me, if I was down there voting, I would ignore all those reports.
Well, it's part of the playbook. They're looking to derail a
Well, that's what they tried to do with Trump.
or an election, rather.
That's what they tried to do with Trump.
That's what they've tried to do with a lot of people.
Because Trump, they had the one solid piece of information, which was that conversation he had in the back of a bus. Basically locker room conversation,
Yeah.
which any guy that's worked in construction or, in my case, a machine shop has heard much worse things than that.
Yeah.
Because guys always are trying to, outdo each other as far as how crude they can be. So that was an irrelevant piece of information, but it gave credence to the follow-up, which was a few days later, where they came out with 10 women that said he sexually abused them. And again, President Trump had been a millionaire, billionaire, whatever the heck he is, for a long time, involved in a lot of things, and all of a sudden everybody came out of the woodwork accusing him of sexual harassment.
Yeah. Herman Cain too.
Herman Cain.
And
they-
all of those people stepped back and refuted their own comments, I believe. I think all of them, if not all, most of them.
But,
Yeah.
of course, those refutations and that setting the record straight didn't make the front page the way the original accusations did.
No.
Right.
So emotion sells. And
Clarence
then,
Thomas is another one.
Oh,
Yeah, Clarence
exactly,
Thomas, yeah, they-
Exactly. The witch hunt.
Yeah, they really toasted Clarence Thomas. And you would think, because he's black, that the liberals would have kind of had hands off, but nope.
No, he's
All they
he
care
was a
about is
conservative.
it doesn't matter what gender, color,
They
sexual.
are colorblind when it comes to that, right?
Yeah, they are colorblind when it comes to attacking conservatives, which is, it's good to see that they're open-minded.
Well, people who defer to reason are scary. Scary
Logic?
people.
Logic?
Well, I don't like to say that. I don't like to say that they defer to reason. I think
It's a bit of a loaded inference, I agree, but
no, because I think it's actually much more sinister than that. I believe they actually do defer to reason, and they understand that a Judge Moore getting elected to the United States Senate is a direct threat to the liberal policies they believe in. And they know that he has a 6-point lead right now, and if they're going to do anything to stop him, they have to attack his moral credentials,
his character.
which is what he's running on in part. And so,
So they're using the nuclear option?
they're using the nuclear option.
Right.
And to me, that's what this is all about. I can't. Obviously, if somebody sexually abused somebody, I don't want to defend them. But by the same token, you see the setup. It seems pretty logical that this is all BS.
Well, I think it's part of a playbook.
It is
You
a
know,
playbook.
When it comes to assassinating someone's credibility in the media, this is not something we haven't seen before.
No,
So.
no. This is what they do. They're very good at it, and it's
Well,
effective.
Isolate, cut down is part of the playbook, right?
Yeah.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
It's-
Which again, I think a disclaimer's in order here. Here we are, a trio of white men, and I'm going to acknowledge, not that should matter, and it really doesn't, but I'm going to acknowledge it.
I don't
But I'm-
self-identify as white. I don't know why
Do
you
so.
assume that.
I'm just going to acknowledge that it's not for us to say whether or not those accusations have credibility, but it is for us to say that in our system, you are innocent until proven guilty, yet the media seems to ignore that at times
Oh, sure.
when it's running these news pieces.
Well, yeah,
And
Acknowledge.
that's problematic.
Right?
right.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, but we're looking at the history of it, and it does fit the playbook,
it appears to, yeah.
and liberals will do. I think that's one thing that there's a lot of things I hate about conservatism, and one of them is they won't do whatever it takes to win. I shouldn't say that because I don't agree with what they're doing, so I wouldn't want us doing it, but. They will do whatever is required to win, period.
But
If that means false accusations, so what? Whereas as a conservative Christian, I can't go out and falsely accuse anybody of anything because the Bible says, thou shalt not bear false witness. So, I in some ways, I feel kind of hamstrung.
Yeah.
But they don't care.
You
Because winning is everything.
you care
It-
about a clean fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing on the legislative thing. In the legislature, we have bills that come up where some, not me, but other conservatives will say, "Well, I want to make sure this is exactly right." And what happens is they will kill the good for the sake of the perfect. And the Democrats don't do that. The liberals don't do that. If they can win an inch, they'll take an inch.
Incremental, right?
And they keep taking inches until you end up with, what we have today. I
Right.
mean, you. I don't know if you were.
Political landscape entirely slides to the left.
It keeps sliding to the left.
Yeah. The thing that gets me about the Moore issue and any other issue like that is he will be crucified based upon last-minute announcements by people about what he's done in 30 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it is.
Yeah, as if it's new news.
Right.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's no condemnation of Bill Clinton in the same pocket. And there's much more evidence there that he had done things that he shouldn't have, and yet he's still a hero. he's still a deity in the Democratic Party, and he should be ousted and torched just like Moore is being, to make it fair. But that's a fair fight. That's
It kind of makes you wonder where the tagline "fair and balanced" came from.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
yeah. The only elected president to be impeached because of breaking the law in a grand jury over a sexual scandal
Straight up
is making tons of money on speeches and is a hero.
and was proven guilty of perjury.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right,
Right.
He
Exactly.
was indicted anyways, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, he didn't actually. Wasn't.
Okay.
Well, the
If
House-
I stand corrected,
The
then
House
I do.
indicts and the Senate charges, I think.
Convicts.
I see.
Convicts, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
I
it's
learned something from constituents. Thank you very much.
See,
pretty-
that's why we have him on.
Smart.
it's
people
more
in
than
your
it's,
town.
it's more than
They're
hearsay.
there, he's here to educate us.
Clearly.
Right.
You-
Gotta
could use
gotta
it.
have your ammunition ready to.
So how long have you lived in Ware and been in this gentleman's constituency? Long time or?
About 90 days.
90 days. Yeah.
I
Getting
moved-
right on
I
it.
moved
I
in
know.
end of June, and
Terrific.
yeah, no, I came from Milford and
Uh-huh.
the land of Gary Daniels and
Yeah.
other folks, and Dave Wheeler. Actually, Dave Wheeler was still my executive counselor, I believe.
Yes,
Correct.
he is.
Yes, he is.
And
Mine too.
yep, a lot of towns. So, but I wanted to come up north a little bit more. So, getting a little crowded down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a little more elbow room and
Oh yeah.
air to breathe.
Yeah, Ware has a pretty interesting history too, and I'm a history nut, and so to live in a town that has such a rich gem of history is kind of fun as well. So, and it just worked out.
It is a town of radicals.
Oh yeah, it is.
And we were talking about before the show the fact that he's got some cool neighbors, and we're chatting about one of them. And I'm sure there's others.
Yeah.
So
Who you got? Who
I
was
think
it?
you're going to have a lot of fun.
Mr. Friedman,
Yeah,
that his name?
Sensei Guru Friedman.
Dojo?
Peter Friedman.
Yeah.
And he teaches martial arts. He's originally from Boston,
Oh, okay.
an Irish guy from Southie, and he came up rough and tumble and learned a few things, and he's passing it on to new generations and anyone that wants to learn. He does a great job.
Yep.
And he's held in very high regard by a lot of people in that world, all over the country.
Oh, really?
it's good to know.
Their
Yeah,
neighbors
look him up, get to know him.
Sure.
So I gotta get him on the show now.
Yeah, there you go.
I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I just put in a plug for him, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
See, what I didn't check, I should have. If I was really good politician, I would have checked to find out if you live on a road that has potential for signs, campaign signs. I didn't
Look at
think
you,
of that.
opportunist.
I didn't though. I should
Rep
have.
Hopper working the angles.
That's what I should do. That's what I should do. That's a great
How's
idea.
your curb appeal, son?
I don't have it. I'm off the road.
No, that's
Sorry.
that'd be a great idea. I look on everybody that lives on Route 114.
Oh yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah.
that votes Republican because I can get that.
I have
And then
call, friends.
and
that-
then call them up and say, "Hey, you want to come on my show?"
I know a
What
few
about the
people
ones that
now that
don't
live
live
on the main road, so we'll see what we can
yeah,
do.
we'll see what we can do. Yeah,
See, I'm going to be running if I run. If
If.
I run again.
you want the
Um,
big bucks, you got to
It would
run.
be under the libertarian banner, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not that would be constructive or an exercise in
Futility.
futility. and
We had
foolishness.
for years, and I think every 2 years, Lisa Wilber in Ware.
I think she just last time she ran, right?
Yeah.
She's on the.
Every 2 years she runs. I used to sign up every 2 years to get her on the ballot because I think anybody who wants to be on the ballot really should be on the ballot,
of course.
whether they're running against me or not.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, but
ballot access.
and the first few times she ran against me, she put in a huge effort and she put up tons of signs. She had actually Lisa Wilber, the campaign sign was shaped like a flag and colored like a flag. It was pretty cool.
Did she run third party?
Yeah, she ran as a libertarian.
No kidding.
6%. She got 6% in
That's
the
not
last
bad.
election.
Yeah, a long time ago she did better because she put a lot more effort into it. The last few times she really, I'm not even sure she put up any signs other than the ones in front of her house.
Mhm.
So I kind of realized that she's too busy or something, whatever. But
Yeah.
she doesn't. I don't know what the percentage she got in the elections. She really worked hard, but I would say 20% is probably
Really?
about right.
That's pretty good.
But the possibility of a libertarian getting elected
It's very low.
is very low because people.
Very low.
I don't know why.
Comes back to whether people are willing to do the reading.
Yeah,
the
are they
homework.
willing? Are they willing to research? I mean, because there's a lot of people who vote for Democrat because, well, we've always voted Democrat, and the same thing on the Republican side.
Yep.
And that's a really pathetic reason to vote.
There are good and bad on both sides. I mean, there's some really bad Republicans that you
Yeah.
don't want in office, and and conversely on the Democrat side, they
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're voting for, you're going to get whatever they have.
You got to look it up. Research your candidates. It's not
Yeah.
about the party affiliation. And when I infer that people aren't doing their homework, it's not to insult any of you folks at home. That hey, you're watching this show, which means you're engaged. You're tied in.
That's true.
But the fact is, we all have busy lives, and we got a lot of priorities, and it's tough to add something to the pile of on the to-do list in order to be that well.
Well, I think it's also that especially in a big election, presidential year, the presidential candidates suck all the air right out of the room.
That's very true.
So their U.S. Senate candidates and governor candidates barely get.
That's one of the negatives of the first in the nation, I think, because
Yeah.
that they take a huge layer off the top of the attention.
I think you're wrong.
Really?
Yep, because the primary is in January and/or February of that year. So by the time the general election comes around, that's old news. So I don't think it's. I don't think it does.
How many people go in and vote for the president and don't do anything down the ballot after that? Just check off one box and then they go out. Do you know? I mean, is that?
I don't know what the number is,
I've
but
been
it's pretty
involved in
high.
recounts after a major general.
Yeah.
Recounts at the state rep level.
Yeah.
And I've attended many of them. A couple of them were my own. And there was a fair percentage, not a big one, but a fair percentage of people that only voted for the president or sparsely voted after the president.
Right.
And those ballots were part of the stack, so they had to get looked at and counted. And
But it was on the smaller side.
yeah,
That's good.
not a lot of them.
Yeah, I always wondered about that.
I would actually rather people did that. I would rather people, like most Democrats will tell people that they want to accommodate to get as many people out to vote as possible. I am of the absolutely inverse belief.
Mhm.
I believe there should be as few people voting as possible, and that the people come out and vote not out of obligation, but because they're informed and they want to vote for what they believe
And
in.
you've touched them. That's the thing. If
Yeah.
if they're people that know you and there's only a small number of people voting, then you're going to win.
Right.
That's how you win.
But the fact of like, for instance, I had a lady I know come up to me one day. What?
We've got an incoming call.
Oh, okay. Let's get this call because I can talk about myself any other times. Go ahead.
I see that we have an incoming caller, so we're going to see who that is. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, this is Norm from Norm Maury and Friends. My question to Gary is my feeling also is that if you don't vote, then you have no right to complain about how the country's run or the city's run. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Sure. That's an excellent point. Thanks.
It's
What do
true.
you got to say, Honorable
Sorry,
I.
my
Robert?
eyes super itchy. I think he's got a point, but I just wish that people, when they went, like we were talking about down ballot, like when they go in, if they're informed and they're voting for president and Senate, but if they're not informed, just checking off names down the bottom like it's a high school quiz I don't think is helpful because
No.
you're voting for people and you don't really have any idea what they stand for, what they believe, or they might not be representing you at all.
Right.
So, okay, so we have an engaged citizen. We're all engaged citizens. We've got a couple of guys that have been crazy enough to run for election in the State House. And you just mentioned a big problem about people being informed. What do we do about it?
You
How
can't.
do we fix it?
You can't fix it. People have to want to.
Well, you got Live Free or Die Alliance. You mentioned them moments ago. They've got a pretty good program. Obviously, it's all internet-based.
Yeah.
Trying to get information out to
They have
the
a
citizens.
lot of members on their page as well.
They really do.
A lot of people.
And they examine hot topics that are a matter of consequence at the State House from
Yep.
time to time.
Yeah, and they declare
It's on their
themselves
website.
as no party affiliation. They're independent.
So they say.
So they say. Yeah.
I haven't looked deeply enough to find out if I agree with that assertion, but maybe it's true.
Yeah.
But I know they do
Do
good
the
work.
do the Democrats have the same kind of? Yeah, they must. They must have voter information on their own candidates. Ratings
those
based.
types of things.
Yeah, because I don't ever hear of them, but they must have. Like, if you're a dyed in the wool liberal, somebody who was pro-choice and anti-gun and would be get 100 and.
Right. I believe there is, but I don't think there's as many as there are on the Republican side or conservative or libertarian.
The liberty side.
Liberty side. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a small, if any.
It's actually a really good question because I, in the 2 or 3 years I've been associated with all of this,
Yeah.
have not been made aware of any ratings organization that is as scrutinizing and thorough and public about their work and about those ratings whenever they're made public.
Right.
So if there is one, I don't know about it. Maybe
Yeah.
there is.
It could be.
It'd be neat to know.
Yeah, because I know that. I'll give you an example. I am willing to bet that most of the people in Manchester, if you ask them, do you believe that a 14-year-old girl should have to inform their parents before they get a divorce, before they get an abortion? Do you believe that should be the law? And I would bet most people would say yes. Right?
I'd be inclined to agree.
If you said to that same thing, do you believe that a 14-year-old girl before she got or at least after she got the abortion, that the parents should be contacted unless there is a judge has intervened because there's abuse or something in the home and the kid's scared? Most people say yeah. But if you look at what the Democrats do in Concord, they always fight against that.
Mhm.
Almost unanimously.
As a party.
As a party, they always vote against that.
Mhm.
So the liberal mindset on liberalism is extreme feminism or extreme pro-choice.
Mhm.
And it's like somebody was telling me they were thinking of running, and they're kind of moderate. I said, well, if you run, because I asked them basically that question, because they said they were pro-choice. You believe in this? Oh, yeah, I believe that parents should be able to know. I says, well, you're not pro-choice enough.
Right.
You will be attacked because you're not pro-choice because of that one vote.
There's an underlying. I feel there's an underlying thread of institutional control in that argument versus parental control, which is, I think, more of the individual side of the equation as opposed to the institutional side of the equation. That's how I see it. That's why the party goes that way. I think it's the state or the school system, the institutions get the deferent treatment as opposed to the parents, which is more on the individual unit.
There's
That's
that.
what it feels like to me.
The statist civic model.
Yep. Right.
Well, it's not only that
Control.
is the if you look at Planned Parenthood and companies like that, they make a lot of money off abortion.
Right.
So it is incumbent on them to do whatever they can to make it easier and easier for people to get them.
That's a good point.
There's a lot of money in it.
Right.
And there's a lot of money that the federal government gives to Planned Parenthood, which they use to send to candidates who will support that agenda.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it's also become completely polarized so that even a conservative candidate that is slightly pro-choice is attacked also.
Mhm.
So it goes both ways, but it's if you ever you must have been a little bit shocked when you first were elected. Were you shocked at how effectively the Democrats vote as a bloc?
No, because I had been. That's a good question, and one would think that had I not been
Versed.
aware, or
Yeah.
or been acquainted with that syndrome, that it would have been somewhat shocking, because it would appear that everybody's individual prerogative on that side of the aisle is made inconsequential, and that they're compelled to vote as a bloc. That's the appearance. But I had been acquainted with the way that that side of the political coin does business, because being in New Hampshire gives you the opportunity to kind of dial into politics a bit
Right,
more
right.
than in other parts of the country, because every 4 years we become a circus,
Right.
right? So I had been paying attention, and it was shocking confirmation to me to see just how little individual prerogative people with a D after their name often were able to exercise on big divisive issues that should enable a rep to engage their conscience, or at least defer to their constituency,
Right.
right?
Right.
You know, that they are called representatives. So that part of it I found a bit disheartening, but I can't speak for an entire party. I can speak for a trend, and
Right.
we're talking about a trend, so yeah, I noticed it.
Yeah, I know that we, when I think it was my second term, there was a legislator from Manchester, Paul Bissard, and he was like an old-time Democrat, 1970s vintage type Democrat, firefighter,
O'Neill.
you know,
Yeah.
pro-labor and stuff like that, and he went up there, and within a few months, I was talking to him, and he says, "Gary, I think I'm in the wrong party," because he's a Christian, so he was pro-life, and he wasn't anti-gun, and all the other social issues. I mean, he was a co-sponsor of a bill to try to write that marriage is only between a man and a woman, and all this other stuff. So he didn't like it up there, because he
It was
was
like Hillary in the 90s.
pretty much.
Yeah, the Democrat Party has shifted a bit, I think, 30 years.
And yet,
40 years.
if you talk to somebody that's an ardent Democrat, and I've got a lot of friends that are, both from within political circles and other circles, because I'm in the arts and whatnot, they will insist that the Republican Party has been sliding to the right towards this alt-right kind of civic ideology. And it is their perspective that that's what's happening, and that it's insidious and it needs to be combated.
It's not even true.
So
No,
it
actually,
depends on who you're talking to.
I think the Republican Party is actually more liberal than it used to be.
Yeah, I think
I-
everybody has shifted to the left of the spectrum.
I tend to agree
Like
with
a
you
tug
on
of war
that.
game, it's shifting in that side, and the alt-right is just a very small kind of faction, I think, that
Well,
barely-
you have to define the alt-right, because I
Exactly, you
that's
do.
well, that's true. Yeah, it's
it is
relative.
I heard Milo Yiannopoulos explain what the alt-right was on TV. I think it was on CNN, and I agreed with him. And then I heard another explanation of the alt-right as being, skinheads, and then another explanation of what the alt-right was. And so I have no idea.
I think it's a nebulous definition, and it serves whoever the critic happens to be at the time.
Isolate, label, divide.
Right.
It's really, I think of it as anybody who's trying to pull
That's the playbook, yeah.
conservatives back to the right a little bit, off the line, right? I think of it as that, and I don't think of it as any kind of radical new concept. I think it's just people that are trying to pull it back to the right again. And but if you label it and you give a target to
Demonize it,
point
yeah,
at,
sure.
then it becomes whatever anybody wants it to be.
It's true.
It's a wide definition, and it becomes now a taboo to.
Yes, if you can label an entire group, no matter, well, it's like nowadays, no matter what you do, you're labeled as a racist,
Yeah.
or a white supremacist, or something,
Right.
And it's insane.
It's just so important that we remember that this crazy political machine, which has gone so far off the rails, was originally designed to give voice to people with individual prerogatives, to speak from their heart, from their conscience, and their mind, and if they represent a group, to do so honestly. And it's that eclipsing of those individual prerogatives, both in political environments as well as just in society in general. That's the big problem. That's the thing we need to remember that we're combating.
Right.
regardless of what team we're on, you know.
Right.
So
I'd rather deal with somebody who doesn't agree with me based on logic and facts, and make your case logically. Give me evidence. You provide input and insight, and stay away from ad hominem and divisive and labeling and identity, and just work. Debate the facts. The old debating concept is gone. You can't really do that. Ask questions of the other side. Break their argument down by Socratic method. Be intelligent about it, right? And have your data, have your facts ready to go to present and back your theory up. And if you can't do it, then the other person's going to win that argument. But you don't see any of that going on today.
No,
it's
you
rare
don't.
that you can actually find.
Well, it doesn't
that
make good TV,
on both
does it?
sides. Well, I think media is fueling that, the emotional side of it, right?
Sure.
It's everything's in flames.
It's
For
got to
ratings.
sell, man. It's
Yeah,
got to sell.
yeah.
If it can't sell, there's no point in putting it on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Except for us,
yeah, but
because we're weird.
we are a little bit odd.
Yeah.
I would love to sit. Maybe this is what you do in the House too, and I've never been there. But I'd love to be able to sit across people that are against one of my policies or my advocacies, and just debate it based on facts. So you learn things when you do that. I would teach them things in the process as well. It would be a two-way process, and it may soften my position a little bit, or it may harden it. It may completely change my opinion. I've done that with people that I somewhat agree with, that I don't completely disagree with,
Mm-hmm.
and I've learned things, and I've changed positions, and because I've learned something that it was evident that I was just not up to speed on something.
Well, that's because you and the person you were interacting with came to the table with not just your set of opinions, but you came with two ears working.
Yeah.
Right?
2 ears in one mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and everybody's got to have all that equipment working.
You all got to be on that same playing field, I think. But that playing field doesn't really exist right now.
Not in mass media.
I don't see it. No. I think locally it probably does within our small groups. In New Hampshire with small communities, people can do that.
Right.
But it's getting harder.
It is getting harder because it's like on Facebook. I'll start an argument because I like doing that,
No.
and then when it gets to the point where people are insulting each other, I cut it off.
Yeah.
I'll delete. Says no, stop insulting. Talk about the issue, and
It's too easy to do that now.
it is because the first thing people want to do is accuse somebody of being Hitler-esque or a racist.
Or just grouping them and labeling them, like you said.
Yeah, and
It's easier.
It's such a pathetic argument.
When that happens, I like to bring up something called Graham's theory of internet arguing. And it's a pyramid that this guy, Graham, he was some professor or something, came up with a pyramid of when you start arguing. So the beginning of the pyramid
Kind of like
is
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
yes. The top of the pyramid is somebody makes a point. The next
Okay.
level is somebody brings up a counterpoint, an argument, a valid argument. But then the layers of the pyramid get to the bottom where somebody accuses somebody of being Hitler. And the question is, how fast can you get to the bottom?
How fast can you be
I have it
accused
right,
of being
upside
Hitler?
down.
Yeah.
How fast does somebody use the accusation of you're Hitler or you're a Nazi? And when someone goes to that level very quickly, I bring up a link that goes to that, and
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
it's kind of interesting to put the mirror up against somebody who just goes right to the personal attack.
Yeah.
And I guess Hitler now is passé. Now you're probably a racist, or I always want to say homogenist, but you're a misogynist.
Homogenous is okay, right?
It's a milk
If
milk processor
if you're in a milk bottle. I
insult.
guess.
Right.
Probably an organic farmer doesn't want.
What
to
does
call it
homogenizing mean,
homogenous.
actually? What does it mean? To clean? Is that part of the sterilizing?
Yeah.
Or is that
Pasteurization
the,
is-
They
is that
zap
the
it
mixing?
with the same gamma rays that created the Fantastic Four,
There you go.
and
Oh.
then you drink it. And
What
it
about
does,
Mothra?
It does
They
funny
cr-
things to your nuclei.
Is that how you ended up with Mothra?
Most likely.
Right?
You know too much.
Yeah. Laser beams.
You were in on that, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Mothra's my hero.
I've always suspected.
So yeah, remember that. I'll share the links.
Oh yeah, you
with
got to share because that's true. I mean, it's
Hold that
kind
card
of
up.
it's kind of pathetic. Yeah, exactly. Because it is rather pathetic that the That's what people do. They get, I don't know if they get frustrated, or some people are just very emotional. So everything's an emotional issue. It's not logical or.
Well, I know I've won an argument when I get called a racist or Hitler or whatever. The other person doesn't have the information to finish the argument, or they know they're wrong, and the only way to win on their end is to just cut me down
Right,
with
right.
with an insult. So
Yeah.
See, I've bumped into some pretty heavy-duty arguments with some of the stuff I put out there. I know that you and I knew each other prior because we worked on a similar presidential primary campaign last year
Yep.
in 2015 and 2016. And during that season, I tend to put a lot of political stuff out there if I happen to be bouncing around on Facebook or whatever social media du jour happens to be. And that tends to draw a lot of heat
Right.
from people that disagree. And what I've noticed is that you get further if you play the evangelist, even though that's not a...
What do you mean?
When I say play the evangelist, it means I'm not looking to win an argument and decimate the positions of my opponent. I'm looking to attract them to my way of thinking, and the only way that I could do it was with honey and not vinegar. And so it's a longer, harder road, and you've got to bite your lip more often
Yes.
and put crumbs of truth out there, and you can't just hit them with this avalanche.
Right.
In my experience, that always backfired. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, the evangelist method?
So,
It backfired?
No.
Oh, the vinegar.
Just hit them with truth and win the argument and win the day.
Yeah, well, you put your sword up, they're going to put their sword up.
Exactly.
You know, you're going to start fighting each other.
I look at that different. I'll give you an example of something I posted yesterday. I went online. I found a cute picture of a little baby with a confused look on its face, and then on top it said, I am the baby speaking. I am either gay or straight. Yet I have to choose which gender I am, or male or female, because I was pointing out the kind of hypocrisy of the left, because they tell people that whether you are or you are not is a matter of genetics. You were born either gay or straight, and you can't change it, and don't talk about it, and don't try to change anybody. And yet now, with the transgender issue is now the hot topic. It's they've inverted that to now it's a boy or a girl. You can't tell them that they're a boy or girl because you're basically oppressing the child. Because that's up to them to decide later on in life. So there's a lot more scientific data to prove that somebody is a boy or a girl than their sexuality. So that so I pointed out just to start an argument, and I made the picture, and it was this cute little baby, and the reason I do it is not just to start arguments, because that is fun, but to talk about it a little bit and have some back and forth. And it's not for the people that are going to be offended, because they'll be offended. They'll post something and they'll say they're offended. But it's for the other people that are the passive viewers. And the reason I do that is, A, they get to look at whatever arguments back and forth,
Right.
because I don't care if somebody disagrees with me. But the other thing is, there's a lot of people out there that are pretty conservative that feel as though there's nobody left that agrees with them. Like they're isolated. And I just want people to know, no, there's still a lot of conservatives out there. Just because CNN tells you different doesn't make it so.
When you say conservative, in this case, you're talking about social
Conservatism.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when I went up to Concord, I know you guys kind of lean towards libertarian, but to me, and this is what I still believe it, is that our other representative, Neil Kirk, really good state legislator, very effective, puts in lots of hours.
Yeah.
His main thing is finance. Okay? His whole focus is on
Fiscal
conservatism. But in my mind, it's the social variable that causes the problem with the fiscal burden on society.
Mhm.
In other words, if you have a society that's completely out of control and completely immoral, it takes a lot more money to maintain order.
Mhm.
We need a lot more cops, you need a lot more institutions, you need a lot more social workers, because as the family breaks down, as the social structure breaks down, government grows exponentially to compensate.
Mhm.
And so that's always been my focus. So the social conservatism, to me, is more about, is indirectly, because I also care about fiscal conservatism.
Mhm.
Interesting theory. I see how that works. Logically, I see how that works. I'm not entirely on board with
I
that
know that.
theory.
I know that, but I
But-
love you anyway. No, I mean a heterosexual way, not a.
No, let's
Yeah,
leave, let's
exactly.
leave that up in the air.
Okay.
But I guess we're talking about shades of gray because there are.
There's a book about that, right? Movie?
Oh yeah, they really went to town with that one. Because there's an extent to which I think in a free society where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is defined by each individual for themselves.
Correct. Yeah, I
and,
get it.
And they reserve the right to exercise those prerogatives. That individual gets to define the parameters within which they're going to pursue those things.
Yes.
And it's not for anyone else to prescribe to them necessarily how they're going to do it, so long as their activities and their behavior isn't eclipsing the same pursuits on that of somebody else's.
I get that.
So it's hard for me to necessarily believe that it is for us, either as a culture or as a government, to prescribe moralistic boundaries to others, so long as what they're doing isn't harming anyone.
Because
So-
the reason I disagree with you is because you're looking at like my liberty.
Mhm.
I have the liberty to do what I want right now, but as soon as I reach over and punch you in the nose, I'm infringing on your liberty to be able to breathe through your nose.
Yeah, well, you just eclipsed my rights.
Yeah, I
I
eclipsed
think
your rights.
he's arguing that that those liberties are fiscally impacting us. That
Yeah.
there's a downstream effect of probably the way it's approached. Maybe.
Well, amoral living leads to the need for more governance and more oversight, is what you're saying.
Basically, like in other words,
And that's expensive.
it's very expensive. Like,
Okay.
and I'll give you a very simple example, and I can statistically prove this: that if you have, and like for the viewers, if you're a young person and you don't want to live in poverty, get married, stay married, and you will not live in poverty. It's wicked simple.
That's the silver bullet?
That's the silver bullet. That's all there is to it. All you have to do is complete your high school. You don't even have to complete college.
Are you speaking from a place of statistical truth?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
If you want your children to do well, get married, stay married, have your kids, and it will work well. If, on the other hand, if you are self-indulgent and you get married and then your secretary has a nicer bum than your wife does after 10 years, and you say, wow, and you can't stop thinking about your secretary, and you say, well, that's, it's my, if I'm happy, that's all that matters, and you go after the secretary and tell your wife to take a hike. Well, the downstream thing of that is it totally toasts your kids.
Mhm.
Oh, of course.
And what happens when the kids are toasted? Well, then they may end up on drugs. That's actually one of the reasons people start doing drugs, is because they have a disassociation problem or an insecurity problem because of family. So
Self-anesthetize.
yeah, exactly. They compensate that anxiety that is generated from a divorce can be self-medicated through illegal drugs. So that's why I have a difficulty with libertarians, because they look at direct liberty. What is my liberty? And as long as I don't do X to somebody, But the fact of the matter is, the long-term consequences of self-indulgence have a great effect on society, and it creates giant prisons and giant police forces. I mean,
I agree with
30 years ago, you moved up to a town like Ware, there'd be one cop, and he worked part-time, and nobody cared if you were shooting in the back of your yard or whatever
Sure.
you were doing. It didn't matter. Because there wasn't you didn't need that much regulation and that much enforcement and that much law and that many judges to.
You didn't need the oversight.
You didn't need the oversight because people
Took care of themselves.
Self-regulated.
Yeah.
What you're talking about when you say self-indulgence,
I
and
get
you
a
say
little- I
it,
get a
you say it
little
in the
bit
same
excited.
breath as those that advocate
I
for
gotta check my blood
maximum
pressure now.
personal liberty. It's important not to conflate irresponsible self-indulgence with a person that is advocating for maximized personal liberty, because they're not the same thing.
Okay, explain.
One involves a wanton disregard for consequence, whether it's upon oneself or upon others
Right.
that one's actions affect. And another is someone that wants to have their individual choices maximized within reason, but understands that every action involves an equal and opposite reaction, and every action has a consequence, and they're willing to accept those consequences and manage them. So you need to have somebody that's got their head on straight and has a sense of responsibility. Otherwise, that house of cards falls down, and you need oversight, and you need another entity like government
Right.
to fill in the gap.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that irresponsible use of maximum personal liberty is not a step forward for society
Right.
at all.
Like if you take a look at legislators like Kyle Tasker, and he's the worst case example, but
Oh, Kyle.
his version of liberty means I can do whatever I want,
Sure.
and I want to change the law so I can mess around with underage girls, and I want to change the law so I can do as much drugs as I want, and his version of liberty was self-indulgence completely.
Sure.
But that self
Given those examples, then I would agree with that.
Okay.
With that statement.
If you look at I think Article 6 of the New Hampshire Constitution basically says exactly what I'm saying in a much more, especially if you look up on your magic box sometime, the original Article 6 of the New Hampshire Constitution still says it, but it was much more evolved. Read Article 6. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Man,
This is
Ted, in
actually
his
the
jacket.
U.S. Constitution.
We only got five.
And I brought it as a gift to your guest and your constituent, your new constituent.
Well, you're
who's
trying to
an-
get his vote too? What the hell's the
I
matter
sure
with
am.
you?
Who's
Even aware he didn't tell you that.
who's a responsible
run
enough
against you.
citizen to want to call you up and look up your voting record.
I have a
Jeez.
state constitution in my car, actually. Somebody gave out.
See, I
some of
looked for
those.
that and couldn't find
They're
it on
hard
my
to find.
bookshelf, but I found this.
Yeah.
So I
Wow,
wanted to
that's
pass
pretty
this
cool.
on to
Oh,
you.
thanks. All right. Very nice.
And I noticed also on our teleprompter that we've only got 5 minutes at this
Yeah,
point.
so
4
anyway,
and a half
quick,
minutes
wait,
left.
no,
So
quick,
finish
I
your
got.
point.
Paraphrasing, Article 6 is morality and piety. And it's basically talking about the necessity for morality and piety in society and how it should be taught to children.
Mm.
And the problem is most people don't know what piety is anymore. They kind of understand morality, but that's almost relative at this point. Piety is reverence for God and family. So Article 6 of the New Hampshire Constitution says morality and reverence for God and family are necessary features of a free society.
Free society. Yeah.
Well, it's self-regulation, basically.
It's self-regulation.
Those are the vehicles.
Exactly.
Right.
Because if people cannot self-regulate, government almost naturally expands to compensate for it.
Right.
Somebody's got to be the adult in the room,
Yes.
you know?
Right. Moral relativism is
If I
pretty
may,
rampant
Yes.
today. Sorry.
you're right. If I may jump in,
No.
I think it's really great that you brought your constituent on the air here.
This just means I'm not that bright, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also really cool of you that you chose to do it.
Yeah.
Throw yourself in this crucible. But is there anything you would like your elected representative to know before we go off the air that are priorities to you as far as policymaking in the state of New Hampshire?
Good question. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to make this known to all legislators, particularly my own, is keep the government small. We've been talking about that void that gets filled where the government feels like it has to step in and regulate us.
Sure.
As people, I'd like to go in the other direction and keep it small, and it's keep it inexpensive, and that sort of goes hand in hand, I think, typically. And I don't want it to do everything. I want it to do a basic set of functions that are usually defined somewhere, in a general sense, and let me self-regulate. I think more people might do that if the government wasn't doing it as much. I think we've now become cradled to sort of expect that, and now we're just not going to do it intuitively anymore.
Yeah, in the absence of God, the government becomes God.
Yeah.
Hey, with that, Tom, thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Gary.
Eric, you're the best. By
Can't
the
believe
way,
you put up with me.
I love
Thanks
you,
for the
man.
gift.
You're awesome. Hey, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good night,
Thanks for joining us,
or
folks.
maybe we'll see you.